The first thing Amara remembered about her childhood was not hunger, though it was always there, sitting quietly in the corner of every day. It was the sound of her mother's voice, soft, firm, and unyielding, reciting the same promise each morning before the sun fully rose. "You will go to school," her mother would say, tying her wrapper tightly around her waist, preparing for another long day. "You will not live like this forever." They lived in a single-room structure at the edge of a bustling Nigerian neighborhood, where the roads were more dust than pavement, and the air carried a mix of frying oil, exhaust fumes, and the distant laughter of children who had not yet learned what it meant to worry about tomorrow. Their home was small enough that every movement echoed, every shift on the thin mattress, every rustle of fabric, every sigh. Her mother, Ngozi, worked tirelessly. Some days, she sold vegetables in the open market, balancing a basin on her head with a grace that made the weight seem like nothing. Other days, she washed clothes for wealthier families, scrubbing until her fingers wrinkled and cracked. There were even days when she returned with almost nothing, her face tired, but her voice still steady. "Tomorrow will be better," she would say, even when it wasn't. Amara learned early that better did not always mean easier. It meant enduring.
How could you do all this for me?
It's okay, my dear. I worked for it, and it's all for you.
School was never guaranteed. There were weeks when fees went unpaid. When Amara sat at home, listening to the distant hum of lessons she could not attend, she would trace letters in the dust outside their home, copying from memory what she had learned before being sent away again. Her mother would watch her sometimes, quiet but observant, and then disappear for hours, returning later with just enough money to send her back. "How did you get it?" Amara once asked. Her mother smiled, tired but proud. "I worked." That was always the answer. Books were rare treasures. When Amara finally got one, she treated it like something sacred. The pages were worn, sometimes torn, passed down from other children whose families could afford to move on to newer things. But to her, they were full of possibility. She read slowly, carefully, making each word last, as if the knowledge might disappear if she rushed. At night, when the kerosene lamp flickered weakly, her mother would sit beside her. "Read to me," Ngozi would say, and Amara would, her voice small but determined, stumbling over difficult words but never giving up. Each sentence felt like a step forward, not just for her, but for both of them.
No, Mama, you eat.
No, my child, you must eat first.
Food was never abundant. There were meals made of little more than hope, stretched thin garri soaked in water, sometimes without sugar, sometimes without anything at all. On better days, there might be stew, rich in flavor, if not in quantity. Her mother always insisted she eat first. "I'm not hungry," Ngozi would say, even when her stomach growled loud enough to betray her. Amara understood, even as a child. And though she ate, she carried the weight of that sacrifice with her. Growing up, she noticed the difference between herself and other children. Some had uniforms that fit properly, shoes without holes, lunch wrapped neatly. Amara's uniform was faded, patched more than once, and her sandals had been repaired so many times they barely resembled what they once were. But she held her head high, because her mother did. "You are not less," Ngozi would remind her, whenever doubt crept in. "You are becoming." Years passed in this rhythm of struggle and quiet resilience. Amara grew taller, stronger, her mind sharpened by both education and hardship. She learned not just from books, but from life, how to bargain in the market, how to stretch a small amount into something meaningful, how to read people as carefully as she read words. By the time she finished secondary school, the world had not suddenly opened its doors. There was no miracle waiting, no wealthy benefactor, no easy path forward. There was only the same truth her mother had lived by. Work. At 22, Amara stood behind her small street store, a wooden structure she had built piece by piece, plank by plank, with money saved over years of careful effort. It wasn't much to look at. The paint was uneven, the shelves slightly crooked, and the roof patched together in places, but it was hers. That mattered more than anything. She sold everyday items: soap, sachets of water, biscuits, small provisions that people needed but often bought in the smallest possible quantities. She knew her customers well, the mother who always asked for credit and paid late but sincerely, the children who came with coins, clutched tightly in their fists, the workers who stopped by after long days, their faces weary but grateful. Amara greeted each one with warmth. "Welcome," she would say, her voice steady and kind. From early morning until late evening, she stood there, watching the world move past her stall. The sun would rise, casting golden light across the dusty road, and she would already be arranging her goods. By midday, the heat would press down heavily, but she remained, wiping sweat from her brow, still attentive. At night, under dim lighting, she counted her earnings carefully, every coin significant. Some days were good, others were not. There were moments when sales were slow, when she wondered if all her effort would ever lead to something more. But then she would remember her mother, her hands worn, her spirit unbroken, and the doubt would quiet. This store was not just a business. It was proof that she had survived, proof that her mother's sacrifices had not been in vain, proof that even from the smallest beginnings, something meaningful could be built. When Ngozi visited, she would stand quietly for a moment, taking it all in the shelves, the customers, her daughter, moving with confidence and purpose. "You see," her mother would say softly, "you are becoming." And Amara would smile, not with pride alone, but with understanding. Because this was only the beginning. The days that followed settled into a rhythm. Amara had come to understand, well predictable in structure, but never in outcome. Morning came, with the same soft light brushing against the edges of her stall, the same careful arrangement of goods, the same quiet hope that today would be better than yesterday. And for a while, nothing changed. Until the day he arrived. It was late afternoon, when the sun had softened just enough to make the air bearable. The road was alive with its usual chorus vendors calling out prices, children weaving between legs, the distant honk of danfos forcing their way through tight spaces. Amara was bent slightly over her counter, counting sachets of water, when she heard a voice. "Excuse me, how much for this?" She looked up. At first, there was nothing particularly remarkable about him. He wasn't dressed in loud wealth or exaggerated style. No flashing jewelry, no arrogant posture, no air of someone trying to be seen. But it was his presence that lingered. There was a calmness to him, a kind of ease that didn't demand attention, yet somehow held it. "That one is 50 naira, Amara replied, her tone polite but reserved. He smiled. Not the kind people used to get something from you, but something softer, almost absent-minded, like smiling was simply part of who he was. 50? Then I must be your best customer today, he said lightly, reaching into his pocket. Amara almost smiled, but caught herself. She had learned not to give away warmth too easily. People could take it and twist it.
Thank you for your purchase. Is there anything else I get for you today?
No, that's all today, thank you. Everything looks great.
Come back soon.
You'll have to buy more than one to earn that title, she replied. His eyes lit up slightly, amused. Ah, so there's competition? There's always competition, she said, handing him the item. He nodded thoughtfully, as if considering that statement far beyond the context of a roadside purchase. Well then, he said, placing the money down, I suppose I'll have to come back. Amara gave a small nod. You're welcome, any time. And just like that, he left. It should have ended there, but it didn't. He came back the next day, and the day after that. At first, it was small things. He would stop by to buy items he probably didn't need: another bottle of water, a snack, sometimes even something trivial like a bar of soap. But he never lingered too long, never made her uncomfortable, never crossed the invisible line Amara kept firmly in place between herself and the world. Instead, he talked, not in a way that demanded her attention, but in a way that invited it. Do you ever get tired standing here all day? He asked once. Of course, she replied. But tired doesn't stop work. He chuckled softly. That sounds like something someone taught you. It is. Another time. He watched her carefully calculate change without hesitation. You're very precise, he noted. I have to be, she said. Mistakes cost money. And money costs effort, he added. She glanced at him then, surprised. Yes, she said slowly. Exactly. There was something about the way he listened, truly listened, not just waiting for his turn to speak, not just nodding absent-mindedly, but absorbing her words as if they mattered. His name, she eventually learned, was Tundai, and though he never announced it, it became clear over time that he was not a man of ordinary means. It showed in subtle ways. The car that occasionally dropped him off, not flashy, but undeniably expensive. The watch he wore, not loud, but refined. The way people greeted him when they recognized him, not with familiarity, but with respect, tinged with caution. Amara noticed. Of course she did. But she didn't ask. Because she had also learned that wealth often came with complications she had no desire to invite into her life. Still, despite her caution, something began to shift. It was slow at first, so slow she almost didn't recognize it. A softening in her responses, a slight anticipation when she noticed the time he usually arrived, a small, reluctant smile that came easier when he spoke. He was different, kind, in a way that didn't feel performative, funny, but never at someone else's expense, humble, even when it became impossible to ignore that he lived in a world far removed from hers. One evening, as the sky dipped into hues of orange and purple, he lingered a little longer than usual. You built this yourself, didn't you? He asked, gesturing to the stall. Amara hesitated, then nodded. Yes, it shows, he said. She frowned slightly. What does that mean? He smiled. It means it has character. Care. It wasn't rushed or handed to you. It was earned. Something about that settled deep within her. Most people don't see that, she admitted. Most people don't look properly, he replied. That was the moment she felt it clearly, the quiet, undeniable pull of something more than familiarity. And it frightened her, because Amara knew better than to trust what appeared on the surface. People could be kind, and still cruel underneath. They could be generous, and still controlling. They could be everything you thought you needed, and still be the reason you lost yourself. So, she kept her guard, even as he began to cross into her life in ways she hadn't expected. It started with her mother. Ngozi had fallen ill. At first, it was dismissed as exhaustion. Years of hard labor, finally demanding rest. But the symptoms worsened. Persistent pain. Weakness that didn't fade. A heaviness that no amount of sleep could lift. Hospitals required money. Tests required money. Treatment required money. And money was something Amara did not have enough of. She tried. Of course she did. She worked longer hours, cut down on her own meals, saved every possible naira. But it wasn't enough. It would never be enough. Tundai noticed the change in her before she said anything. "You're not yourself," he said one day, his voice quieter than usual. "I'm fine," she replied quickly. He didn't push, but he didn't believe her either. It took days before she finally told him. Not everything, but enough. "My mother is sick," she said, her voice steady but strained. "I'm handling it." He nodded, slowly. "How much do you need?" he asked. The question hit her like a sudden gust of wind. "No," she said immediately. "Amara." "No," she repeated, firmer this time. "I didn't tell you so you could do that?" He studied her carefully. "I know," he said. "But I'm asking anyway." She looked away. "I don't want to owe anyone." "You wouldn't owe me," he replied gently. "That's easy to say," she muttered. He didn't argue. Instead, he stepped back slightly, giving her space. "Let me help," he said quietly. "Not because you asked, not because I expect anything, but because I can." She wanted to refuse. Every instinct told her to. But then she thought of her mother, her sacrifices, her strength, the way she had always found a way when there was none. And for the first time in her life, Amara didn't have a way. So she nodded, reluctantly, carefully, and that single moment changed everything. Tundai didn't just help, he took responsibility. Hospital bills were paid without delay. Better doctors were consulted. Medication that once seemed out of reach became accessible. Ngozi began to recover, slowly but surely. And with that came a gratitude so deep it almost felt like a burden. But he didn't stop there. He began to help with her business. At first, it was advice. "You should stock more of this," he suggested one day. "There's higher demand in this area." Then it became action. Shelves were improved. Supplies increased. Connections were made that allowed her to buy goods at better prices. Her small stall began to grow, not drastically, but noticeably. Customers increased, profit followed. And with each step forward, Amara felt herself being pulled deeper into something she could no longer fully control. Because it wasn't just help anymore, it was presence, consistency, dependence. And somewhere along the line, her guarded heart, so carefully protected for so many years, began to open. She laughed more. She waited for him. She trusted him. And though a quiet voice in the back of her mind whispered caution, she pushed it aside. Because he had shown her nothing but kindness, nothing but sincerity, nothing but care. But life had taught Amara one truth she could never fully ignore. Not everything that begins gently stays that way. And though she didn't see it yet, this was only the beginning of something far more complicated than she could have ever imagined. The call came in the middle of a slow afternoon months later. The kind of afternoon where time seemed to stretch endlessly, where even the sun felt lazy as it hung in the sky, casting long shadows across the road. Business had been quiet, and Amara had taken to reorganizing her shelves for the third time, her hands moving with purpose, but her mind elsewhere, as it had been for days. Her phone vibrated against the wooden counter. She glanced at it absent-mindedly at first, expecting nothing more than a supplier or a customer inquiry. But the moment she saw the number, something in her chest tightened. The hospital. Her fingers hesitated for just a second before she picked up. "Hello, good afternoon. Is this Amara?" "Yes, speaking. This is from the hospital. I'm calling to inform you that your mother is ready to be discharged." For a moment, the world went completely still. Amara blinked, her grip on the phone tightening slightly. "Discharged?" she repeated, as if the word needed confirmation before it could be real. "Yes," the voice continued calmly. "She has responded very well to treatment. The doctor has cleared her to go home today. You can come and complete the discharge process." Amara didn't realize she had stopped breathing until she let out a slow, shaky exhale. "Thank you," she said, her voice softer now. "Thank you so much. You're welcome. Please come as soon as you can." The call ended, and for a few seconds, Amara just stood there, staring at nothing. Then it hit her. A smile broke across her face, slow at first, then full, overwhelming, unstoppable. Her chest felt light in a way it hadn't in weeks, as if a weight she had grown used to carrying had suddenly been lifted without warning. Her mother was going home. Her mother was okay. Without wasting another second, she reached for her phone again and dialed the number she had come to rely on more than she cared to admit. Tundai picked up almost immediately.
Oh my goodness! Mama is being discharged from the hospital today.
That's incredible. I'm on my way there right now.
"Amara? She's being discharged," she said, the words rushing out, breathless with relief. "They said she can go home today." There was a brief pause on the other end, just long enough for her to imagine his smile. "That's good news," he said, warmth evident in his voice. "I'm glad. I'm going to the hospital now. I'll come with you." "You don't have to." "I want to," he replied gently. Amara hesitated for only a moment this time. "Okay." The hospital felt different when she walked in that day. Lighter. Not because anything had physically changed: the same pale walls, the same sterile scent lingering in the air, the same quiet urgency in the movements of nurses and doctors, but because she had changed. The dread that had once followed her into that building was gone. In its place was something fragile, but powerful: hope. Tundai met her just outside the entrance. He was dressed simply, as always, but there was something about the way he carried himself, calm, composed, present, that immediately steadied her. "You're here," she said, a small smile forming. "I said I would be," he replied. They didn't say much more as they walked inside together, but there was a quiet understanding between them now, something deeper than polite conversation. When they reached Ngozi's room, Amara paused at the door. For a moment, she just stood there, her hand resting lightly against the handle, as if preparing herself for what she already knew she would see. Then she pushed it open. Ngozi was sitting up, not lying weakly against the bed, as she had been before, not struggling to move or speak, but sitting back straight, eyes alert, her presence filling the room in a way that felt almost surreal after everything they had gone through. "Mama," Amara breathed. Ngozi turned, and the moment her eyes landed on her daughter, her face lit up. "Amara." There was no hesitation this time. Amara rushed forward, closing the distance between them in seconds, wrapping her arms around her mother carefully but tightly, as if afraid she might disappear if she let go. "You're okay," she whispered. "I told you I would be," Ngozi replied softly, her voice stronger now, steadier. Amara pulled back slightly, searching her mother's face, taking in every detail, the color in her skin, the clarity in her eyes, the strength in her posture. It was real. She was really okay. And then Ngozi's gaze shifted. "To this young man," she said, her tone changing instantly, filled with curiosity and warmth. "I owe my life, don't I?" Amara turned. Tundai stood just a few steps behind, his expression modest, almost uncomfortable with the attention. "No, Ma," he said quickly. "Please, it was nothing." "Nothing?" Ngozi repeated, raising an eyebrow. "So, hospital bills pay themselves now?" Amara couldn't help the small laugh that escaped her. Tundai smiled sheepishly. "I only did what anyone would do." Ngozi studied him for a moment longer, then nodded slowly. "Then not everyone is as good as you," she said simply. There was no exaggeration in her tone, no politeness for the sake of appearances, just honest, direct gratitude. "Thank you," she added, her voice softer now. Tundai inclined his head slightly. "You're welcome." But that was only the beginning. The discharge process took time forms to sign, instructions to follow, medications to collect, but Amara didn't mind. Not today. Today, every small delay felt insignificant compared to the outcome. By the time they finally stepped out of the hospital, the sun had begun its descent, painting the sky in warm hues once again. And for the first time in a long time, Amara felt at peace. Bringing Ngozi home was its own kind of celebration. Their small space felt fuller, brighter, as if her presence alone had restored something that had been missing. Ngozi moved slowly at first, adjusting, but there was determination in her steps. "I won't stay weak," she insisted. "Not after all this money has been spent on me." "Mama, rest," Amara said. "I will rest," Ngozi replied. "But I will also live." And live she did. But more than anything, she welcomed, especially Tundai. From the very first visit, Ngozi took to him in a way that surprised even Amara. "You came," she said warmly, when he stepped into their home for the first time after her return. "Of course," he replied. "Have you eaten?" Tundai paused, slightly caught off guard. "Not yet." "Then sit," she said immediately, already moving toward the small kitchen space. "Amara, why are you standing there? Bring him water." "Mama, you don't have to." I said sit. And that was that. From then on, it became a routine. Every time Tundai visited, and he visited often, Ngozi made sure he ate. Sometimes it was something simple. Other times, she insisted on cooking full meals, despite Amara's protests. "He has done too much for this house," she would say. "The least we can do is feed him properly." Tundai tried to refuse at first. "You really don't have to go through all this trouble," he would say. But Ngozi would wave him off. "It is not trouble. It is respect." And slowly, he stopped resisting. He would sit, eat, laugh, engage in conversations that stretched longer than intended. Ngozi asked him questions, not just polite ones, but meaningful ones. "Where did you grow up? What kind of work do you do? Do your parents know how you help people like this?" Tundai answered carefully, but honestly, never boasting, never revealing more than he was comfortable with, but always respectful. And the more he spoke, the more Ngozie's fondness grew. "He is a good man," she told Amara one evening, after he had left. Amara, who had been washing dishes, paused slightly. "Yes," she said quietly. Ngozi glanced at her. "Be careful," she added. Amara frowned. "Careful? A good man is still a man," Ngozi said, her tone thoughtful. "And life is not always as it seems in the beginning." Amara looked down at her hands. "I know. But did she?" Because as the days passed, as laughter filled their home more often, as Tundai's presence became something familiar, something expected, Amara felt herself slipping further into something she could no longer pretend was simple gratitude. It was deeper than that now, warmer, more dangerous. And though everything felt right, there was still something unseen, something unspoken, waiting quietly beneath the surface, something that had yet to reveal itself. A year had a way of changing things quietly, not all at once, not in ways that could always be pointed to and named, but slowly, steadily, like water shaping stone. Life had shifted around Amara, in ways she sometimes still struggled to fully grasp. Her small street store was no longer quite as small. The wooden structure still stood where it always had, but it had grown expanded just enough to hold more shelves, more goods, more possibility. The once uneven paint had been redone, now smooth and deliberate. The roof no longer leaked when it rained. A small refrigerator hummed softly in the corner, stocked with cold drinks that sold quickly under the afternoon heat. Customers came more frequently now, not just the familiar faces she had known for years, but new ones too, drawn by better stock, better pricing, better consistency. She no longer reorganized her shelves out of boredom. Now it was necessity. Business demanded it. And behind the counter stood Amara, still grounded, still observant, but changed. There was a confidence in the way she moved now, a quiet assurance in how she spoke, how she calculated, how she carried herself. She had grown into her space, into her life, in a way that felt both earned and undeniable. And then there was Tundai. He was no longer just the man who stopped by occasionally. He was part of her life. Present, consistent, important. Their relationship had not begun with grand declarations or dramatic confessions. It had unfolded naturally, like everything else between them. A shared moment, lingering a little too long. A conversation that turned softer, more personal. A look that said more than words needed to. And eventually, it became something neither of them questioned anymore. They were together. He still came often, still helped when needed, still listened, the way he always had. And Amara, despite every warning she had ever given herself, had let him in. Not completely, not without caution, but enough. Enough to care, enough to trust, enough to build something that felt real. And for a while, it was.